And so today we have a very, very special guest. Toby Davis is here from Prepaid to Coin, and really here to talk about Bitcoin utility and a very specific individual use case. Welcome to the podcast, Toby.
Thank you, Kevin. Glad to be here, and always glad to talk about Bitcoin.
Yeah, same. Maybe we can just start with a bit of your background and a bit about your company.
Yeah, so jumping in a bit about my background, I was born here in the San Francisco Bay Area, grew up in Berkeley, which, being so adjacent to San Francisco, very tech-enabled place. Grew up seeing a lot of different innovation and saw and heard about a lot of different new technologies kind of early. So, for example, we had a startup here in Berkeley that did robots with food delivery as early as 2016. So,
Wow.
a lot of the things that we're seeing getting rolled out in other parts of the world, I've already seen it 10 years ago. So similarly with Bitcoin, I got into Bitcoin pretty early. Been using Bitcoin just kind of as an early user since around 2011, 2012. And since then, it's been pretty amazing to see where it's gone, honestly. I mean, myself and everyone else in the early days, well, everyone else that I talked to, we never thought it could be what Bitcoin's become today. It's truly amazing.
I think it's still just the beginning.
I agree with you.
So what about Prepaid to Coin? What I really want to get into the value that you're providing for your clients, because I think it's incredible. And the use cases are ultimately what drive adoption. And I think there's so much value that's being created for people when they understand this technology that it's really incredible. So I want to hear everything about what you're doing.
Yeah, so the reason we started Prepaid to Coin is we saw that it was kind of a niche where people really wanted to transform their gift cards and prepaid cards into Bitcoin, to the point where secondary platforms like Paxful are doing billions of dollars of trading volume. And, there was no safe and easy way for people to do it, because while someone could go to a platform like Paxful, local Bitcoins, and be able to, trade their gift card or prepaid card for Bitcoin at, maybe 50% of the value of the card, or in some cases even higher, we didn't find that was a safe or economically effective way for people to onboard into the ecosystem. So we wanted to create something that would be cheaper and all around better, and of course, regulated. And so that's why we created Prepaid to Coin. The way we kind of spotted it was I was in the space prior with a previous business that I built in the Bitcoin space, where just basically selling Bitcoin, and essentially grew that to about 1 million in sales per year, a little over 1 million in sales per year. And then from there, that's when I identified, hey, there's a lot of people that want to pay with a prepaid card, but, they can't do so with our service. So why not create a new service that takes advantage of, this huge niche that's there, essentially. And then once we started getting more into it, we noticed that, people that are unbanked as well also face the same challenges with not being able to onboard into the crypto ecosystem at, affordable rates. I mean, what we've seen is a lot of the Bitcoin ATMs and BTM operators in the space, they're charging here in the US, especially in some of these more lower income areas, predatory pricing, such as, starting at around 26%, we've seen as high as 50% just to purchase Bitcoin with, cash. So a lot of these people in these communities that are kind of marginalized by the traditional financial system are essentially shut out of being able to enter the cryptocurrency ecosystem at all, as well as, just simply invest in Bitcoin. And so we wanted to make sure that, since Bitcoin was created to provide a freer version of money to everyone, that, everyone was actually included in that.
It seems aligned with what we're trying to do in terms of democratizing finance and offering services that would be available to everybody, including kind of 2 billion unbanked people in the world. Just a bit on the regulatory side, you mentioned regulated, and I'm just trying to understand. I was looking at your website earlier. You need a driver's license. So is it really just the U.S. market? And can you talk more about the specific demographic that is affected by this and that you're able to serve?
Yeah, so it's very interesting. We've actually been doing a lot of market research in some other markets like APAC, some places in the EU as well, and we find that there are lots of places throughout the world where people face these challenges with, the unbanked being able to convert their cash into cryptocurrency easily and affordably. Though it is less of a challenge for those that are not in the U.S. We found, as BTMs in a lot of these other countries are, we've seen rates as low as 7%, honestly, which I don't think you'll ever find here in the US. So we found that because of the way that a lot of these BTM operators try to take advantage of those in kind of lower income neighborhoods and those are that are just kind of shut out of the financial system, it really created an opportunity for us to be able to provide economical rates for them, even with it still being a little bit higher than what you see in some of these other countries.
Um, so So for you, Toby, what's the next step in terms of what you're building? And I guess, you know, again, any more in terms of why you're building? I think you've covered it well, but this is
Yeah, I
this
mean,
is
going into a little bit more about why we built prepaid to coin, there's a lot of people that purchase prepaid cards or gift cards and they think that they'll be able to use them for typical everyday uses such as shopping on Amazon, shopping at Target, or just paying bills, typical everyday uses, and they often find that they run into challenges trying to use the cards as they're effectively meant to be used, which is why we provide an easier alternative with prepaid to coin where they can take that gift card, get rid of it, transform it into Bitcoin, something that is, essentially, as we said earlier, a much freer form of money where they can transmit that Bitcoin wherever they'd like to. Now, the next step for us is going to be actually introducing a prepaid card that allows the users to be able to spend that Bitcoin directly with the merchant of their choice. As right now, we send that Bitcoin directly out to the user, and at that point, the user is able to use, one of the many services available, such as, Fold or Bit Refill, to purchase a gift card, which then they can go use at the merchant of their choice. But we find that, the more you streamline the process for that end user, especially for individual consumers, just makes it easier for them and increases adoption. So that's what we're looking forward to doing here.
yeah, I constantly live the same thing with my business every day in terms of, making it as easy as possible for people to interact with it and understand what it is and removing all the frictions. So definitely, uh, you know, feeling that. I
Of
guess
course, of course.
the other question, that always interests me is kind of the challenges you're running into, and I know there can be challenges on all kinds of sides, from technology to regulatory to client issues to, internal issues that you might be having. So I'm curious what kind of things you run into.
Right. I mean, everyone in the industry always says it's never a boring day working in the crypto industry. But like many crypto companies, we face challenges with banking. I mean, especially during the recent crypto winter we faced during the last administration. But I'd really say in recent years, things have gotten a lot better. And at this time at Prepaid to Coin, we really got some great banking partners that really help us be able to transform cards into crypto and accomplish our mission. Now there are, other minor challenges that we face presented by things such as, overly restrictive or outdated money transmission laws, but that's something we've been able to navigate relatively easily due to our team's deep kind of legal and regulatory compliance experience, and we've been able to obtain, several no action letters from, several state regulators and navigate that process effectively. So we found that, we really wanted to learn from some of our former competitors like Paxful's mistakes in the compliance department. They did billions of dollars, but eventually had to shut down. So we built the compliance stack first, revenue second, as we really wanted to build something that was going to be around for the long term. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the regulatory piece is obviously very important when we're dealing in financial services. Um, I'm curious, kind of on the technology side itself, when you're giving people Bitcoin, what is that, self custody Bitcoin to how exactly does that work?
Yeah, so we don't have any site wallets, any company hosted wallets that we provide to users. So we do encourage self custody. So we encourage that the user download something like um, Exodus or any of the other various wallets and uses that to custody their Bitcoin themselves. But we also do allow users to send that Bitcoin to custodial exchange wallet if that's what they'd like to do. For us, it's all about that user being left with the choice to essentially put that Bitcoin wherever they'd like. So
nice. Yeah, I mean, again, choices are really good. That's kind of the entire point of Bitcoin, and that's amazing. I'm curious. I mean, you've been in the space a long time. OG, it seems like.
right,
You've seen a few things in that time, I'm sure.
certainly.
And is there anything, like any things that you can pull from that, and that you do pull from that, and that you can give advice to builders that would be helpful? For me, this is the best part of the podcast. I get to kind of tap into the brain of really smart people and see what's been successful in building in the space.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's, obviously you want to build for the gaps that others are ignoring. I mean, if there's a gap that you see and, there's clear demand, but nobody else is doing it, just because nobody else is doing it doesn't mean you shouldn't strive to do it. So I encourage builders out there to, go for those spaces in between.
Like a niche.
Exactly. Find your niche that works for you, and make it work for you. And, on that note as well, I think that founder market fit really matters as well. So if you don't have an edge in the industry or the niche that you're, trying to create a project in, I don't think it's a good idea for you to go into that niche. Most of the time, as, someone else that does have that edge is going to have a much easier time building that than you will. So I think it's always best to find your competitive edge and, get in where you fit in, so to speak.
Do you have many competitors in this space now? And if so, what do you see as your edge?
For us, it's really been interesting. As I talked earlier about some of the banking challenges that we faced, and we really seen with our competitors that's been very restrictive for them, and most of them have actually gone away due to not being able to find banking in such a restrictive space, which is one of the major reasons why it was very smart for us to go with the compliance first approach. As if you're going to be working with regulated banks, regulators, I mean, it's best to prioritize their, complaints, any worries they may have, and kind of get that out of the way on the forefront before focusing on, striving for 100xing your revenue.
So kind of asking permission rather than seeking forgiveness afterwards.
Right. I know that's something that, a lot of founders, especially in the crypto space, hate to go that route. But I do think it's the route to go if we want to make sure to be able to include everyone in the ecosystem. It's not going to be able to be done without the help of the banks. I mean, people have to have a way to actually on-ramp into the ecosystem. Maybe once we reach 50% world crypto adoption, we can talk about operating entirely separate and independent from the banking system. But for the time being, I think we're going to have to live with them and work with them.
Frenemies.
Exactly.
But I think, yeah, I mean, you raise a good point that to me, talking about this with other guests, and in business in general, I'm just shocked at the banking situation for everybody. And this is from, wallets to prepaid cards to really anybody in the space. Like my business is based in El Salvador, and it's pretty hard to open up bank accounts, and you would think that wouldn't necessarily be the case. So, or maybe people think that's not the case, but even in El Salvador, it's an issue. And talking to other service providers in El Salvador, this is a known issue in the space. And I agree with what you're saying in terms of, at this point, banks are kind of still needed. But to me, a bit of the experience I had before was dealing in a mortgage business, and it just became, an exercise in collecting documentation and asking people for information and making them jump through hoops. And at some point, I really have to think if you can make a user experience that is, cheaper, faster, and better in every single way than banking, that the banks kind of, maybe fall by the wayside and don't have that, importance in society. And I think for me, the other piece of that is the only reason the banks exist in their current form is from public, funding. And so the next time they fail, I think they're going to have a harder time, maybe, being recapitalized by the government when they wouldn't be, they weren't willing to give the sitting US president a bank account. And so I'm really interested in terms of how this unfolds. And, to me, there's all this risk in the banking sector that, if you're in the banking sector, you talk about counterparty risk and all these other things. But if you're a client of the banking sector, you don't really, you just kind of assume your money's safe. And it's safe because there's an implicit public bailout when your bank fails, whereas that bailout doesn't necessarily exist in the crypto or Bitcoin space. So, as we see more and more adoption, and I'm not sure it necessarily needs to be 50%. I think once you make these tools accessible to people, and you look how quickly, kind of paradigm shifting technologies get adopted, it's, we're talking about something like the internet, or, like you look at consumer technologies from television to the microwave and other things. It's not, I think we're starting to see the point of inflection. And that's why, I think the price action these days is particularly interesting, because it doesn't correspond to anything I'm seeing in the real world, where there's increasing merchant adoption, additional use cases, financial tools, and interest in Bitcoin as an investment and as a medium of exchange.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I really think it's a question of when we start to see some of the rails that actually move the money start to come on board, such as Visa and MasterCard, as I feel like they're a big reason that the banks have so much control that they do. As your everyday person wants to just be able to spend their money pretty simply. They want to take their debit card and swipe it, whether it's attached to a bank account or not. I'm not sure that that's something that your everyday person that just wants to spend their money cares about. And when we get to that point where an everyday user can just take cash and easily load it, at the store onto some sort of crypto card where they can both access their cryptocurrency and also be able to spend that, like everyday money at any merchant, I think that's when we'll see the point where banks will have a real challenge on their hands and, a real problem.
Yeah, I think it's on the consumer side. I also think it's on the investment side. I mean, it's just better money, and the entire system is now capitalized on debt that can't possibly be repaid unless it's printed money. And
right.
There's some tough choices that need to be made, and kind of, balancing budgets and other things. Otherwise, government is just going to eventually take over everything, it seems. So, yeah,
very true. And I mean, we're seeing a little bit of that happen as well with the deep government involvement with some of these firms like Circle, Tether. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that develops as well. As, I mean, we're taking the control out of, the banks and giving it to, these private firms. So,
well, yeah,
to a degree.
There's so many interesting things. I mean, for my business, and I love Google and I love Apple, but we have an app, and so we have it in the App Store and Google Play. And in some ways, it's almost like they've become the de facto regulators of whether we can distribute this or not. And so you have these kind of tech behemoths, and if you believe any of the conspiracy stuff about COVID, maybe they're, taking some directive, from some higher power in terms of what they can and can't do. So, yeah, it's, and then, again, from a banking side, I think, having worked at banks and still have friends who work at banks, it's, they'll say, well, we can't, take these people on because it's this KYC risk. We don't know where the money's going and all this other thing. So they can kind of continue to put this shield of nonsense up and do it under some regulatory cover. And to me, again, if we get to this world where people can do what they want and make individual decisions and be able to transact freely, whether it's with gift cards, prepaid cards, self-custody, Bitcoin, what have you, and the tools exist for them to do that, I don't see anybody choosing the banking sector. Like, I just don't.
That's true. That's true. I mean, once it's made simple enough with the right infrastructure for the everyday user to be able to understand it and easily use it, I think that's when we see the real kind of turning point there. I strongly believe that Bitcoin's future isn't really determined on, institutional involvement. It's really more on boring infrastructure.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think, this has been incredibly helpful. I'm, grateful for the time. I'll kind of leave it to you with the last word, and if there's any any way people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, I mean, everyone, please follow us on Twitter, Instagram at prepaid to coin. That's prepaid, the number 2, COIN. You can also find our website at prepaidtocoin.com. So that's prepaid, the number 2, coin.com. And the advice that I have for everybody out there watching is buy Bitcoin and hodl.
That's some solid advice, and thankfully I read that disclaimer at the beginning, but that's solid advice at any time for anybody. I really appreciate your time.
Agreed. Appreciate your time as well.
We'll talk soon. Thanks again.
Talk soon. Thanks, Kevin.